Right. Good evening, colleagues. My name is Councillor Tony Page and I'm Mayor of Reading, and I have the privilege of chairing these meetings. First of all, this evening I have an announcement to make regarding webcasting, and I would like to inform and remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live on the internet and will be available for repeat viewing on the Council's webcasting site. The only other announcement is to record the apologies from Councillor Tarrar, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, everybody else is here, or some stragglers still to come. In which case, can I ask if there are any declarations of interest? Nope. Can I, turning to the minutes of our last meeting held on the 30th of January, can I sign these as a correct record? Thank you. Make sure I do sign them. Yeah. There have been no petitions received. There have been no public questions received, but two councillor questions. The first from Councillor White to Councillor Rowland. Councillor White.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This question is on more free bulky waste collection slots needed. Green councillors have campaigned against fly tipping in the town for some time. We were pleased when the council introduced a free bulky waste collection service. However, unfortunately, when residents bring this up on the doorstep, and in my own personal experience, it is very difficult to get a slot, and you can try numerous times and still fail. Does the council have any data on how many times people are trying to book this service and failing? What plans has the council got to reduce the number of times a resident has to try to successfully book a slot?
Councillor Rowland.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I thank Councillor White for your question and for your party's support of yet another Labour-led initiative to assist residents in this town, especially those with limited means around bulky waste removal and our efforts to reduce items that may be potentially fly-tipped. As I'm sure you will observe from this evening's budget considerations, we are really pleased to provide any free service at all in such a financial climate. The service currently costs circa $250K per annum and provides approximately 4,500 collections per year. Unfortunately, shortly after the launch of our offer, the government announced new structures around the way POPs items must be dealt with. POPs stands for persistent organic pollutants, and these are commonly found in domestic upholstered items. If a request comes in to remove an old dresser, a broken table, and a sofa, that means 2 trips for our removal teams, as the POPs items must be segregated from all other items and dealt with separately. I am sure you can imagine our program's cost and structure shifted significantly from what we originally programmed as a result of that. Furthermore, I am sure you can also see from the pages before you that there is no magic money tree to increase funding and capacity for this very popular free program. I am afraid we are, at best, forced to live with the budget we have. We have no captured statistics on the numbers of failed booking attempts, but we do accept that a free service that provides 18 collections a day for approximately 180,000 residents in the midst of a cost of living crisis is going to be extremely popular. I am also sorry that residents are having difficulties in booking, but with 4,500 bookings a year equally, many residents are successful. The process is placed on a first come, first served basis, which is the most equitable method that we could have in place. Booking slots are made available daily, 2 weeks in advance. For those with digital exclusion issues, we retain 12 slots per week for telephone bookings. Slots are regularly booked within an hour of becoming available. Our advice to residents is that they should attempt to book the service as close to 5 p.m. as possible to ensure the greatest chance of success, which is the current release time for booking slots. There may be a need for residents to persevere with the process to ensure success and to repeatedly clear any caches on their machine. Given the obvious facts ahead of us at budget setting, regrettably, this council is not currently in a position to increase capacity for any free service, no matter how desirable or justified it may be. We will be looking at a wide variety of options in order to maintain this service, even as it is, by possibly varying times of those booking releases, limiting collections to once per year per resident, or targeting low utilization areas in order to ensure that as many residents as possible can benefit. We would also like to remind the public that there are many alternative solutions for the disposal and/or recycling of unwanted bulky household items, such as donation to charities, free cycle online, making arrangements with landlords for clearance, taking the item directly to RE3 on Island Road, arranging the collection and recycling of white goods with the retailer when purchasing a new item, and finally with the council's own reasonably priced paid bulky waste collection service. Additionally, legislative change requiring manufacturers and retailers to take back end-of-life products are being discussed. If this happens, demand may change and our offer may need to evolve in the future. Ultimately, I feel sure that all colleagues across the chamber will see the fragility of a free offer as we seek to set this budget this evening. Nothing that is free is really free, Councillor White, and I am sure that even the most level-headed resident can see the significant struggles that lie ahead for local government and for this council as it continues to do all it can for our residents. Thank you.
Councillor White, do you have a supplementary?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Which brings us on to the second question from Councillor McElroy to Councillor Ennis. Can I mind you, Councillor Ennis, that there's a 5-minute limit on your reply.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In 2019, the council pledged to go plastic free. The pledge claimed this would be achieved by phasing out the purchase of single-use plastic products through services commissioned by the council where possible and as soon as practicable, bringing regular reports to future committee meetings describing the council's plans to eliminate single-use plastic from the organisation, including a timetable for doing so, working with Reading's businesses, community groups and residents to share advice, ideas and best practice on using sustainable alternatives, working with schools to support the aspiration of Reading's young people to eliminate plastic waste from our environment, seeking to work with neighbouring councils to tackle single-use plastic use across the wider Berkshire area. Can the lead councillor for Climate Strategy and Transport please update us on the council's progress against these commitments? Thank you.
Councillor Ennis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor McElroy, for your comprehensive question that deserves a comprehensive answer. So I shall begin. Since declaring a climate emergency in 2019, this council has continued to strive towards reducing its climate carbon emissions to reach our target of a net zero Reading by 2030. Whilst the council has reduced its own carbon footprint by 74% in 14 years and is one of only 119 towns or cities around the globe that is recognised for taking bold leadership on environmental action, we recognise there is more to be done. The council remains committed to reducing its single-use plastics in its venues as part of becoming a single-use plastic free. That said, it is worth acknowledging that the need to respond to COVID and the resultant wider increase in single use for personal protection and hygiene reasons have had an impact on the immediate momentum to implement the 2019 pledge. The idea of refilling and reuse has taken a while to recover. Some of the actions the council has taken includes, for the buildings we manage, it is considered in our procurements, raised in building user meetings and included in the building management handbook. At the council's theatres, single-use plastics have been substantially reduced. At the Hexagon Town Hall and South Street, phased out all products supplied in plastic drinks bottles in 2019 in favour of canned and glass alternatives. The pantry at the Town Hall uses recyclable or combustible coffee cups, cardboard containers and paper bags. All forms of takeaway packaging is compostable, including the coffee cups and lids. Ice creams are supplied in cardboard packaging and recycling is encouraged throughout the venues. The Hexagon is continued to work on a sustainable and safe solution during events where glass is not permitted due to safety concerns. The current plastic cups are made from recycled plastic, but we are working towards a paper alternative. South Street are developing a green rider to share with visiting artists and hirers to request they try and share some of our environmental aspirations. The council's leisure partner, GLL, is committed to reducing and or eliminating single-use non-recyclable plastics from its premises. GLL are trialling phasing out plastic overshoes at Palmer Park Leisure Centre and Stadium, instead asking customers to remove shoes prior to entering the changing rooms. In the meantime, the other centres are only using suppliers that can guarantee their product is recyclable. Bins are situated under the overshoe dispensers for overshoes, and these are reused until they considered no longer fit for purpose. Water stations in the leisure centres are available for customers to fill their own bottles. Disposable cups are not provided. New Directions College have phased out single-use plastics as part of a robust sustainability strategy to embed delivery of education for sustainable development across the college's operations, programs and partnerships, reaching all the college's adult learners. There is a lot more to do. The college is very much on a journey, but as a place-based institution, keen to share learning.
Councillor Ennis, you've only got a minute left.
Okay, I won't rush because it's there, isn't it? People can read it. The council, just tell me when it's finished. The council is working with other event organisers, including Reading Festival, to develop more sustainable festivals and events, urging festival goers to take action and to say no to single-use plastics and take their tents home. The council has been invited by Vision 2025 to be part of a pilot project to test use the Green Events Code along with 9 other local authorities. The Code of Practice was officially launched as a working standard in development at the Sustainable Events Summit, 19th of October 2022. The code focuses on 7 key areas where positive environmental change can be achieved: governance, energy, travel and transport, food and drink, wastewater and influence, and also aims to eliminate the use of single-use plastics by 2025.
And that is your 5 minutes, Councillor Ennis.
And the rest
I'm
is there.
afraid.
Thank you very much.
I will invite Councillor McElroy to see if he has a supplementary.
Yes, please, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. It seems a pretty big one that the council is still using thousands of plastic cups at the Hexagon and the town hall at least. How does it take 5 years and counting to switch procurement to paper cups?
Reading Libraries and Reading Museum have significantly reduced single-use plastics. I think the answer's there if you can read it, and further on you can see the efforts that are being made to reduce single-use plastics. And, you know, the journey is there. COVID got in the way, and we believe there'll be massive progress in the next coming period. Watch this space, Councillor McElroy, just like the buses.
Thank you. And that concludes questions from councillors. We now move on to the substantive budget item. And before we start this section of the meeting, I must remind everyone that as this is our budget setting meeting, I'm required to hold a recorded vote on tonight's motion relating to approving the authority's budget and the level of the council tax to be levied in accordance with the Local Authorities Standing Orders England Amendment Regulations of 2014. Additionally, as is our usual practice, I will be asking a composite motion to be moved covering items 7 to 11 on your agendas, as these reports are all interrelated. I've also asked the monitoring officer to record the length of the speech of the Leader of the Council, so I can afford the same amount of time, or up to the same amount of time, to each of the other group leaders or their representatives to respond to the budget, but they don't obviously have to speak for the same length. So on that basis, can I invite Councillor Brock to move the motion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I should say that I'm conscious this is my first budget where you are not sat beside me as a trusty attack dog, although I have always thought the Irish Terrier to be superior to the Dachshund in any case. Like all things in life, council budgets have a context. It is a more and more common tendency of political charlatans to pretend that they don't. And even more common to pretend that choices between priorities never need to be made. The populist will cry, "You can have it all and I'm the hero to deliver it for you," whether they're crowing from Westminster, Mar-a-Lago, or even, I dare say, some corners of Reading. And we shall hear it all tonight, I'm sure. Perhaps we'll be told that council tax could be cut if only we had eliminated some kind of quasi-mythical waste, or that we could deliver some councillors' favoured pet project if only we used some kind of purposefully misunderstood reserve. Opposition, I think, is a luxurious place to be. And the price of being the controlling group is that we Labour councillors must instead conduct ourselves with both a consciousness of context and an awareness that we cannot make all people totally happy all of the time. Both should be obvious truths anyway, but I suppose it must be tempting to avoid them when one doesn't have the responsibility of leadership. And a large part of the context in which we operate is a continually faltering national economy and a continually failing National Conservative government. One might begin to suppose that the two features are, in fact, connected. Having successfully driven inflation up by a factor of 5, our Prime Minister now delights in having brought it back down to a level still in excess of where it has been for a great many years. Imagine celebrating, Mr. Mayor, the cost of a product going from £1 on Sunday to £2 yesterday to £3 today as the great triumph of halving inflation. But that's the calibre of government these days. Rampant inflation, together with long-term anemic economic growth, and now a recession, is a perfect storm for both individuals and public services across Britain. This council must pay more for everything we require to operate, just as we all must pay more for our weekly shop, our rents and mortgages, our utilities and our transport. The cost of living crisis is also a public services crisis. And because residents are paying more for those essentials of life, more and more residents are struggling to make ends meet and are turning to the council for support. And we should never abdicate our responsibility to those residents, but our funding does not grow according to demand. An extra £1 million expenditure in homelessness support here in Reading is the simplest but also the starkest manifestation of the sombre state of the nation around us. Yet our Conservative government, possessed of a wisdom that would make such luminaries as Silvio Berlusconi appear as intellectual giants, believes that a good response to this is to find an additional 1.6 million for Reading, around 1% of our annual budget, while at the same time failing to make any commitment around the Household Support Fund, which is worth 2.25 million for Reading's residents. The impact of rising demand and inflation also means that our adult social care services, already stretched beyond what any outside observer would think reasonable, require an additional 5.5 million in 24 to 25. Meanwhile, in children's social care, a third factor of severe distortion in the care provider sector contributes to an even greater rise in costs, and we make provision for an additional 7.4 million. Taken together, social care expenditure is approaching 70% of this council's annual budget. Services that are absolutely vital, but often unseen by the majority of residents. Yet there may come a time in all our lives where a family member, a friend, or even ourselves may have to rely on such provision. And the nature of electoral politics means that there are few votes to be won in these services. But it is a sign of a mature local politics that we are able to provide additional funding while at the same time demanding innovation in the services themselves, as I'm sure Councillor Gittings and Councillor Hoskin will expand upon this evening. If anything, we should all hold local government social care provision in parity of esteem and pride that we have for the NHS. If we cast our contextual view further forward, we can see great challenges to come. The rising deficit in the high needs block, a national issue manifest in Reading too, is most immediately apparent. But we might also point to the ongoing slow recovery of income streams post-pandemic, the manifestly broken system of local government funding, a fragmented public sector where partnership in delivery is not easy to maintain, the difficulty of recruitment and retention in an increasingly bizarre and unequal UK economy, a shortage of affordable housing, the changing shape of our town centre, and an environmental challenge that is clearly at the forefront of our minds every time we have to make strategic decisions. Labour in Reading has built a platform of financial stability in this council over the past 5 years, and this allows us to adjust next year's budget to the reality of these issues without having to make cuts to frontline services or undermine the council's existing capacity. At the same time, we are also able to ask officers to deliver further efficiencies of 4.6 million, and I pay tribute to all the staff involved in developing those proposals and to all those who will play their role in delivering them. But we must also be aware that budgets set a context for the town. This budget, and no budget, can be a passive vessel of circumstance unless we wish to do no more than manage the decline of our country on a local level. That might be, of course, the Conservative way, but it is certainly not the Labour one. We know that we cannot simply ignore for now the shape of things to come. So we protect our investments in the future of Reading. We continue our largest ever road resurfacing programme. We welcome the completion of the flagship swimming pool later this year. And who can wait, Mr. Mayor, for a ribbon cutting at Reading West Station? Because we believe that modal shift in transport is the only way to deliver a greener and less congested future. We are proud of our bus service improvement plan and its forthcoming delivery of new bus priority measures across the borough, speeding up journeys, just as it has already reduced the cost of travelling by bus. Added together with our active travel schemes, we work towards making it far easier to ditch your car day to day. The housing crisis may be national, but we know the effects are felt locally. Our council home building programme, the largest in a generation, continues apace and will be delivering over 400 new homes, including much needed provision for key workers and those in receipt of extra care. And we know that the town centre must remain vibrant and adapt to changing habits. So I'm delighted that we have progressed our aspirations for the Minster Quarter, including new affordable homes and new employment opportunities, an urban renewal scheme to remove a mid-century scar from our town, improve the setting of the Minster Church, and of course further supercharged by our delivery of the Hexagon Studio Theatre. And on a similar note, a new library here in this very building, bringing life to Bridge Street, and a modern interpretation of that civic spirit of the middle of the 20th century, albeit with fewer concrete podiums, leaving an awkward legacy. And in these, as in so many endeavours, this council could do so much more if the government were to release the shackles binding us. We ask not for handouts from Westminster, but the ability to raise our own income in a manner that local and regional government does across the world. I'm far from alone in this call, and it has been heartening to see a cross-party consensus emerging across the country. And whatever the general election brings, I hope all parties will recognise the necessity of reform. But since we don't yet live in such times, we have to make the choice between raising council tax or cutting services. And since cuts would harm those less fortunate and on the lowest incomes in our community the most, we do what we have to do, alongside a draw on our reserves to cover a one-off deficit on the collection fund. But I am conscious, though, of the effect of the council tax rise on those who can afford it least, so we make available additional funding to supplement the council tax support scheme by providing an additional £80 relief to all recipients, thus fully mitigating the effect of the rise in year for those on the lowest incomes in Reading. This is a budget to keep the ship steady in turbulent times. But I'm also a believer in the power of local government to make positive change for individuals and communities, and you can see that clearly in Reading. And although I'm never known for my modesty, even I would be pushing it to claim that Labour's built a utopia here. Yet anyone can see that we do our best for our town, the town we all call home, in adverse circumstances, and that we have delivered, and we will continue to deliver. Mr. Mayor, I commend this budget to the council, and I move the composite motion as printed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brott. That was exactly 11 minutes. Can I ask Councillor Gittings to second?
You can indeed.
Are you speaking now or reserved?
I will speak now.
Okay. Carry on. But you don't have 11 minutes. You only have
No,
5.
it's a shame. You can start
Up to.
you can start the timer now. So, Mr. Mayor, I'm old enough to remember when you seconded the budget in your own peerless style, as Councillor Brock has referred to. I'm also old enough, not sadly really, to remember 1973 when you were first elected to the council. So by my reckoning, this will be the 51st Reading Borough Council budget meeting you have been involved in. 51st, which is roughly 1 year for every £1 million of the adult social care budget allocation. Councillor Brock's referred to that already, which is over 30% of the total revenue budget of the council, to put it in context. And as lead councillor, I'm pleased to report that thanks to the effort of the adult social care team for this year's budget, there are no overspends. That's a considerable achievement, and saving targets were also met. If we agree Labour's budget tonight, I hope we get unanimous support. We had it on the Fire Authority a couple of weeks ago. Councillor McElroy, I know because he was there. And there was in Labour Bracknell last week, with again Green Party members in support. So we live in hope. If we agree, when residents get their bill, they will note the 2.99% increase. Then on top of that, the extra 2% set aside and earmarked for adult social care. And many will be wondering what that means with household budgets tight, thanks to the Tory cost of living crisis. And what that really means is that you are paying for the Tory government's total and abject failure, in the words of Boris Johnson, to fix adult social care. Like a lot of things Boris Johnson promised, remember 40 new hospitals? Still waiting in Reading. It hasn't happened. And his narrow definition of the fixing adult social care wasn't fixing it at all. Instead, putting the focus on capping the level of fees when you pay when a loved one goes into a care home, which is just about 6% of the population. And surprise, surprise, even that hasn't happened. There is no cap, and adult social care has an acute funding crisis, with the extra cost falling at the feet of local authorities like Reading. So as Councillor Brock's alluded to, nationally it's a gloomy picture, and the country is crying out for a change of government and a proper plan for adult social care, not to mention properly funded public services. But it's not just about money. I passionately believe that we need to change the narrative around adult social care. And locally here in Reading, led by our new director, Melissa Wise, with full support from me as portfolio holder, we're doing just that. Our service helps people of all ages, many with profound needs. But the portrayal of adult social care in the media is almost always accompanied by a photo of the wrinkly hands of an older person, reinforcing stereotypes and dehumanising the individual. In fact, I don't like to refer to people accessing our services. There are over 1,600 in Reading as service users. I know we do in council papers and meetings, probably in tonight's papers, almost by necessity, but they are people. I don't like references to vulnerable people. They are people. citizens of equal worth who need a bit of extra support. As Councillor Brock said, that could be any of us at any time. So in adult social care, we need to draw on the talents and lived expertise of these people needing our support to co-produce and co-design the services we're delivering for them. Not only is it vastly better for them, it can also address some of these budget challenges we all know about. These aren't going away. There's been a near 18% increase in over 65s in Reading, and that trend is continuing, many of those with complex needs. More and more people need our help and support. Recently, about 60 more people with a cost of over 2 million to the budget. So we must adapt our services and our approach, working collaboratively with our public health colleagues and the NHS to address that. We've had many successes in doing that in Reading. Our policy of home first, using our teams of social workers and occupational therapists, help prevent people going into hospital or care homes. And technology can play a key role in achieving this. And Reading has been recognised for pioneering work led by our IT team. Not often we thank them, but great work. We won a £1 million grant for a project that places digital sensors into people's homes so their movements and habits can be remotely tracked using an app. It's estimated we could help over 600 residents live independently and more safely in their homes using this tech, 600 people. We're also building new extra care facilities. It's in the capital budget papers tonight.
Councillor Gittings, you've got 30 seconds.
Another supported living for people with extra needs at Hexham Road and Amethyst Lane, in addition to Battle Street. Again, this will help more people staying in their home in supported environment rather than other more expensive and less personalised interventions. Keeping to this theme and aspiration, I'll finish with a vision we're using for the basis for our new upcoming adult social care strategy. We all want to live in a place we call home, with the people and things we love, in communities where we look out for each other, doing the things that matter to us. I think that's a good aspiration, good ethos for all the services we deliver to residents. I second the budget. Please support it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gittings. We now turn to the three group leaders, with Councillor White to go first, and you have up to 11 minutes. I was going to say to avoid repetition as well, but anyway.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and councillors will be pleased to hear that I won't be taking the full 11 minutes. First of all, on the budget process, we were disappointed by the lack of meaningful consultation on the budget. Labour's long-standing policy of consult and ignore has been whittled down under severe cutbacks to just ignore, which is a shame. This budget doesn't stand alone, though. It's part of a national picture. People are suffering from the cost of living crisis after a series of shocks that have pummeled this country: austerity, COVID, Liz Truss. We have a Tory government in power that believes that if you are rich, then you can look after yourself, and if you are poor, well, you can look after yourself as well. We're all eagerly waiting a general election, I'm sure, but whether it's blue or red in charge, the economic policies will be largely the same. This means that the funding to Reading Council will be largely the same, and the cuts will continue. What was needed under pressure from massive national cuts was fight, imagination, and above all, honesty. Honesty to say that these budgets might be necessary in the face of Tory cuts, but aren't wanted. Honesty to say that these budgets might be necessary in the face of Labour financial mismanagement over the years in Reading, but they aren't something we're proud of. Over inflation increases of council tax and social rent will hurt residents and tenants. The small increase in the council tax reduction grant will not protect people from these larger increases. Greens think this grant should be bigger. On climate change, before I was a councillor, I was part of a successful Green campaign for the council to produce a climate strategy. More recently, the council has committed to net zero by 2030, but carbon reductions are starting to flatline. This target won't be met without the scale of investment that only the government can achieve. And disappointingly, Labour nationally have scrapped the 28 billion investment in green infrastructure, which makes it even more unlikely that the council will meet the net zero by 2030 target. But Greens will keep up the pressure for climate action. In 2013, Green councillors successfully moved a motion calling for a real living wage for low-paid council staff and people working on council contracts. This has helped tackle poverty in the town, but 10 years on, unfortunately, poverty is going up. And we are concerned by the state of the council finances, and we're concerned about the impact this will have on a real living wage in the town. This budget does increase the amount of money available to ensure the council can pay the real living wage to care staff, for example, and we strongly support that. But as we read in the business cases supporting the different budget changes, other options were considered. Greens think that the Labour administration should pledge this evening to always remain an accredited living wage employer. On the Ethical Care Charter, following a Green Party motion in 2014, the council also signed up to Unison's Ethical Care Charter to help tackle the crisis in the care sector. Again, 10 years on, and this is under threat. The budget papers specifically say that workforce challenges would mean the council reviews its participation in the charter. Greens don't accept that and think that the Labour administration should pledge now this evening to always remain a signatory to the Ethical Care Charter. Reading deserves better. But there are areas in the budget that we support, Mr. Mayor, and all parties have to be pragmatic. We have previously asked about vehicle emissions-based charging for parking, and we're glad to see this is being progressed. We campaigned on the council's poor record on missed and delayed bin collections, so we are pleased to see that the council has responded by committing to employing the correct number of people to empty Reading's bins on time. We have campaigned on homelessness and rough sleeping, and so are pleased to see the increase in funding in this area. We also support the £80 council tax reduction grant, although we would have rather seen a larger increase to make up for the increase in council tax this year. This will help those on the lowest incomes nonetheless. We have raised numerous damp and mould issues, as many councillors will have done as part of their casework, so we support permanent officers in our housing team to tackle damp and mould. In conclusion, Green councillors will be critically supporting this Keeping the Lights On budget. It now covers more of the basics, like bins being emptied on time, but we will be keeping working for an increased council tax reduction grant to support those on low incomes. We will keep working for all Reading residents to receive at least the real living wage to tackle poverty. And we will keep pushing for the council to do more to insulate homes, making them warmer, cutting bills and carbon. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor White. Councillor Mitchell, over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and I thank both Councillor Brock and Councillor Gittings for their earlier remarks. As we've heard, RBC's officers believe that this feels like the most difficult time that they've ever faced in local government, with more struggling councils having to issue Section 114 notices in the last 2 years than ever before. Thankfully, we are not in that position in Reading for now. But despite what the administration always claims, our own officers themselves accept it is not about funding cuts, rather it's about our costs far outstripping our income. A situation that yet again means that Reading's hard-pressed residents are once again tonight facing the full 4.99% increase in council tax, even though central government funding is still giving us as a council a minimum 4% increase in line with all councils across England. That's a real terms increase in funding guaranteed by the government, itself a further 1% on top of the provisional settlement figure of 3%. So despite the politics that always come into play at budget time, this is not about so-called austerity. It's not about cuts. It's certainly not about inflation, which the government is successfully bringing down. It's about an explosion in costs that every council is struggling to contain. In that context, we welcome the fact that Michael Gove, our Secretary of State for Levelling Up, recently confirmed the final local government finance settlement for 24-25 was a total of £64.7 billion across England. That figure represents an increase of 7.5% in real cash terms for councils throughout the country, and it includes an extra £600 million promised principally for adult and children's social care. We welcome too the fact that the department said its decisions had been taken in light of the scale and nature of other councils' failings, an individual council's financial situation, and the need for ongoing government intervention to drive improvement and recovery. Thankfully, due to our officers' careful stewardship of our budget, that does not yet apply to Reading, but our situation remains fragile as costs continue to increase. The final settlement, of course, also included £1.5 billion in additional funding for social care compared to 23-24, bringing the total grant funding for social care through this settlement to £8.7 billion across England. Michael Gove himself has said the settlement and the changes we have made to address concerns raised through consultation, which the government doesn't ignore, will provide local authorities with the tools to support their local communities, continue to reform their services for the long term, and help communities prepare for the future. So what does all that mean here in Reading? Well, despite RBC being given some £600,000 net down in the provisional settlement, we lost, as we've heard, around 1 million in the services grant element, but got some 400,000 back in the minimum funding guarantees. Reading actually gained around 1.6 million in additional funding through the social care grant, which was obviously good news. That offset against the 600k provisional settlement net reduction meant that RBC was still around £1 million better off, yes, thanks to the government. You'll say it's not enough. I agree with you, but it's a step in the right direction. So the government was recognising our increasing costs in social care, especially children's social care. That said, again, as we've heard, here in Reading, our homelessness budget remains under significant pressure, as we're being asked to increase it by around £1 million as more and more people, both individuals and families, are presenting themselves for council support. It's absolutely right that we do all we can to assist our local rough sleepers off the streets, but that £1 million will only reflect the cost pressures already upon us. There have been big increases in waste disposal costs too. We are facing cost increases there, again, of around £1 million, but both of those are relatively insignificant in comparison with our adult social care cost pressures, as Councillor Gittings outlined. On ASC, it's not demand pressure, but the cost of individual placements that is at the core of the problem. As a real living wage employer, RBC, rightly, as Councillor White said, pays providers so that their care workers earn more than the national living wage. And given the most recent 10% rise in the real living wage, that too has clearly meant a steep rise, leading to the budget for ASC rising by around £5.5 million. But the real issue lies within children's social care. Brighter Futures are asking for a £7.9 million increase in their contract sum for next year. And again, we have faced a 10% increase in the number of children being looked after in the course of the last year alone. That is significant in itself as well, but not the only cause of the cost increase. The fundamental problem is the cost of each placement. Each individual placement can cost more than £500,000 per year per child, a staggering sum. We accept, of course, that this is not peculiar to Reading. It's not necessarily just a local problem, it's a national picture. But what, for example, are we doing locally to increase our own number of foster carers to reduce costs, given the much higher cost of private foster agencies? SEND, the high needs block, too faces significant pressures, and we're pleased to see that we are one of 55 councils now working with the Department for Education to try to find ways to tackle that crisis alone. So the two biggest financial risks facing the council are clearly children's social care placements and spending on children with special needs. Together, it means we're looking at potential cuts of £10 million in 25-26 budget, with the prospect of it only being avoided if some of these cross pressures do start to reduce. Most alarmingly, officers are projecting that some 2/3 of the RBC budget will be spent on social care alone next year, and it could go even higher to 3/4 in 2 years' time, all potentially at the cost to our universal services, and that can't be sustainable. So what's being done to understand the cause of this explosion in costs? Is it that young people's needs are getting ever more complex? Yes, that's part of it. We are seeing more and more teenagers, particularly, coming into care with ever more complex needs. How can this be sustainable when there aren't sufficient placements available nationally of that sort to deal with the children already in the system? So I would urge not just the administration here in Reading, but the government to play its part too. A national solution is required to this national problem, one that is causing us a £9.5 million overspend on children's social care placements here in Reading alone. DLUC has also highlighted its deadline of July this year for local authorities to develop and share productivity plans as part of its efforts to improve sustainability. Those plans must be agreed by council leaders and members, all of us in this, and published on our website, together with updates on our progress. So what will the Labour Group be doing to show government its plans for, one, the transformation of our services to make better use of our resources? What opportunities do we have to take advantage of advances in technology and make better use of data to inform RBC's decision making and service designs? What further ways can RBC reduce any wasteful spend within its systems? It's not a chimera, as was suggested earlier. There is always waste that can be trimmed. That should include, says the government, specific consideration of expenditure on consultants and often discredited staff equality, diversity and inclusion programs. But it should not include programs rightly designed to promote integration and civic pride and counter extremism. And finally, how will RBC be telling the government that it can identify barriers that are preventing reform that the government can help the council to reduce or remove? So thanks are due to our finance officers for their continued diligent work in achieving a balanced, stable budget tonight and achieving any risk, avoiding any risk locally of Section 114 notices for now, even allowing for the fact that they've had to draw on just over £3 million in reserves. Credit is also due that we also have a sufficient level of reserves to manage this year's overspend as well as next year's pressures. But if costs continue to increase at current rates and no additional funding or savings are identified, in 18 months' time, it may well be a very different story. So the message is essentially, for now, we're okay. For now. But what assurances can the administration give us that the detailed pieces of work now necessary to get a grip on children's social care costs and manage the inflationary pressures in our other services and to bring forward realistic saving proposals exist for the 2025-26 budget round? This work will be vital if we're not to join the growing list of councils in financial distress. Officers may understand the scale of the challenges ahead, but does the administration? The risks remain clear. In that context, we finally also welcome DLUC's commitment to local government funding reform and the indication recently that a 2-year funding settlement may well be under consideration soon, rather than the present 1-year cycle with the lack of certainty that it regularly causes councils. We are just as aware as Labour of the disparities in entrenched deprivation and fuel poverty that still exist within Reading. after some 30 years, I might add, of Labour control, and the stark impact on life expectancy that flows from them. So we as Conservatives will continue to argue for frozen or lower council tax increases for our residents, as we're acutely aware of these pressures on the people of Reading during the cost of living situation at present. And that's why we remain opposed to doing anything tonight that will make matters worse for our residents. As councillors, we'll always continue to do all we can to address Reading's problems.
You have 30 seconds, Councillor Mitchell.
While putting residents first. Let's face it, thanks to the competent marshalling of our costs and our relatively healthy reserves by officers, we are still in the position of being able to balance our budget overall tonight, not necessarily the political decisions that have been made locally to reach that stage. I'm concluding, Mr. Mayor, in just over 2 months' time, as the people of Reading start trying to pay their higher council tax bills, they will once again have their say on whether Labour's financial record over the last decade and more really does warrant this administration's continued running of Reading. We once again will be arguing strongly that it does not. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is not an inspiring or ambitious budget, because it can't be. This is quite simply a keeping the lights on budget, as has been mentioned before. We are seeing local government finances across the country in peril, and both councils nearer and further afield have suffered the consequences of potentially bad previous decisions and filed Section 114 notices, or more known to the general public as effectively bankrupt. Although Reading is still not in the financial position which I'm sure we would all love it to be in, I am pleased we are not sitting here talking about a Section 114 notice, and instead talking about maintaining the running statutory services, including the vital social care we offer to both adults and children. So I'd like to thank officers who have provided us with a robust, balanced budget to vote on, and for keeping reserves at levels other councils in this point in time would envy, despite them not being amazingly high. I'd like to also thank officers who were successful in bids for money to central government, which means the residents of Reading can still look forward to improvements such as the bus service improvement plan and the regeneration of the Minster Quarter without them affecting the frontline services that simply must be run. This is not a new situation that Reading and other councils find themselves in, with this Conservative government consistently underfunding local government and shortchanging residents while wasting their money in Westminster left, right and centre, and providing the continued circus of the likes of Lee Anderson. Residents will rightly ask why all the various taxes they are paying aren't going towards the things they see around them and affect their day-to-day lives. Now, we do see an increase in funding from central government through the local government settlement, as Councillor Mitchell mentions, but what he didn't mention is that the increase was predicated on the assumption that local authorities would raise council tax by the maximum amount, as directed by Michael Gove. So instead of funding councils properly, the Tories are funding them off the backs of local residents. I hope any future government in the inevitable general election tackles this local government funding crisis properly head on, and the priority it deserves to make a real difference on the ground to residents. I also remember Councillor Singh last year suggesting the council could save money by having a local election only once every 4 years to save money. Well, I have another suggestion to save money. To save the cost of running 2 elections in 1 year, the government should call a general election now should be held at the same time as the local elections. I think I'm going to leave it there and we'll be voting for the budget. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Moore. I've got Councillors Barnett, Ward, Hoskin and Hacker who have indicated, but no others so far. So we'll go in that order. Councillor Barnett, Ward.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to try and do this with a mask because I want to keep my germs to myself. Thank you, Councillor Moore, for your contribution there. We've also had some very entertaining contributions from the Green and Conservative leaders with a quite outstanding hyperbole and creative mathematics. So I'm very sorry that mine's going to be a bit boring because I'm sticking to the facts. Since 2010, Council's national spending on libraries has halved, with 800 libraries closing their doors for good. Nationally, councils are spending 40% less on theatres, museums and leisure centres than they were 14 years ago, with leisure centres across the country closing due to rising costs and falling budgets. But here in Reading, our Labour Council believes that leisure and culture is not a fluffy area of the council's work. It's not just a nice to have. It's essential for tackling inequality in our town and ensuring that every child has the opportunity to learn and thrive, and every adult has access to free and low-cost fitness, well-being and arts activities. Despite the bleak national picture, Reading's Labour councillors continue to value and protect our culture and leisure offer, and residents continue to benefit from it. In the last year, we've opened our new flagship Rivermead Leisure Centre, with the launch of the new pools now just weeks away. We've delivered improvements at Meadway and South Reading leisure centres, with the brand new pool and improved centre at Palmer Park continuing to grow in popularity. We've seen over 200 Reading residents benefit from Healthwise programmes delivered by our leisure partners GLL, and footfall at our leisure centres is now approaching 1 million visits a year. Our libraries have welcomed over 250,000 visitors, with borrowing now above pre-COVID levels, bolstered by the removal of fines and most charges, and by innovations such as the new library app and ebook and audio apps that enable residents to borrow our electronic resources 24/7 at their convenience. We've been celebrating 45 years of the Hexagon and continuing to deliver blockbuster shows and concerts there, alongside smaller scale and innovative theatre, music and comedy at South Street. Reading Museum schools visits are back at pre-COVID levels, and the museum, in collaboration with partners, including the National Museum of Computing, has secured a £90,000 grant from the National Lottery Heritage Fund for a project showcasing Reading's digital revolution. Last summer, the Town Hall Concert Hall welcomed 12,000 visitors in just 1 week when we hosted Luke Jerram's Gaia as part of Reading Climate Festival. We've been supporting the fan-led campaign to save Reading FC and harked back to past glories at the club by bringing the Simod Cup home to Reading as part of a special museum exhibition. Reading's leisure and culture offer received national recognition last year when we received the prestigious LGC Award for Diversity and Inclusion. Our culture team have also been integral to Reading's response to recent tragedies in the town, unveiling a memorial plaque to James Furlong, Joe Ritchie Bennett and David Wales in Forbury Gardens, and working with community safety partners, artist Stuart Melrose and young people in Reading to bring the Armoured Heart to Oracle Riverside. Despite the difficult national picture, there is so much to look forward to in leisure and culture in Reading. I've already mentioned the pools, whose opening will complete our £45 million investment in leisure facilities. We've also secured £19.1 million in levelling up funding to deliver a new studio theatre on the Hexagon campus and a brand new central library fit for the future, as Councillor Brock said, right here in this building. Even though the begging bowl culture of the current government is iniquitous, making councils chase pots of funding, we will still always take every opportunity to deliver money for Reading. Our success in working with partner organisations and securing external funding has been crucial to our ability to keep investing in Reading's culture and leisure services, as has our success in securing commercial opportunities. I'm a passionate believer in publicly funded leisure and arts, because council provides the best of both worlds. Our gym and sports facilities are on par with the private providers, but at a fraction of the cost. And we provide Healthwise and other programmes to support people into improving their fitness and getting active. We have big touring productions at the Hexagon, but we also host local groups. South Street attracts big names, but also supports smaller theatre makers, as well as programming work that would be unsuitable for commercial theatres. A recent immersive production for people with profound and multiple learning disabilities had an audience capacity of just 6, along with their carers. This is important work that enriches the lives of our residents, and I'm proud of the council officers who deliver it and of the Labour Council that values and invests in it. But every year it gets harder as the crisis in local authority funding cuts grows ever more acute. We cannot know what the future of council funding will bring for our leisure and culture offer, but in this budget we are continuing to deliver and develop for our town, and I therefore commend the budget to the council. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Barnett-Ward. Councillor Hoskin.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, as I was sitting here reflecting on the speeches. I was wondering where we'd be now if we'd listened to the Green Party demanding extra spending every year, and where we'd be if we'd listened to the Conservative Party demanding council tax freezes every year. Where we would be effectively bankrupt. And what we've done, you know, you argued against it at the time, is to stabilise finances to allow us to present a budget which, unlike nearly most other councils, doesn't lead us into a Section 114 notice, but is also about protecting vital services that people of Reading rely on. And that's what we're about on the Labour bench. It's about taking pragmatic decisions that's right for Reading, even if it's unpopular at the time. And I think that's why, you know, Councillor Mitchell talks about elections. I think actually the people of Reading recognise that, and that's why they return Labour majorities, because it's about doing what is right. I mean, I'm incredibly proud to be the lead councillor of children because of the really important services that our hardworking officers provide. I mean, we're talking about things about safeguarding children. We're talking about caring for, you know, for children who have no one else to care for them. We're talking about the supporting the families that are most in need. But, you know, Councillor Mitchell's right. This is a fact of costs in children's services are increasing ahead of income. I am really proud that this council has the wherewithal and this these Labour councillors have the faith to put substantial and extra funding into children's services so that we don't have to make drastic cuts you'll see elsewhere in terms of those vital services. It's also worth saying, though, that within this budget, I mean, Councillor Mitchell, I'm sure you're offered a briefing on the essentials within here, and you would have been briefed on that within this budget, there is projects around addressing the lack of in-house foster carers to improve that situation. The Edge of Care programme, which sounds a little bit like a Hollywood movie, but is actually really important work, which is about investing in those families that are struggling and children are just moving into care to bring them back and support them back into the places. I mean, Councillor Gittins talks about, you know, people want to be at home, want to be cared by their families, and that's within this programme. And that is vital work. Because, I mean, Councillor Mitchell was sort of, you know, he's sort of half right, but mostly wrong. You know, you're right about cost outstripping demand, but actually, I'm going to come back to the point. This absolutely, the situation that this council finds itself in, that actually this country finds itself, it's not even about councils, is absolutely about austerity. Because, and we said it again and again and again, the government were pushing forward false economy after false economy after false economy, and that's really writ large. We're here in children's services. We know now that the UK is like the sick economy of Europe, but very literally so. We have the highest levels of long-term sickness. You know, the NHS pared back leads into extra costs for the economy, and then that leads into crisis for families. I mean, it's amazing, you know, so much of what's really important takes a long time to deliver and is long term. And that's what we've never got from this government, is long term investment in children's and families. And in fact, we've had the opposite. We've had cutting back of community centres, of youth workers, and perhaps most you know, well, schools that have less money to spend per pupil. And actually, one of the things that I'm most outraged about, and most angry about, is the slashing of Sure Start across the entire country. And now we're really starting to see the effect of that. And there's you know, it's too late now, isn't it, that the evidence is coming out in terms of the massive financial benefit of Sure Start that far outstripped the investment and the cost. And what did the Conservative government come in? They slashed it all away, and now we're seeing that the increased costs, whether that be about a sicker, less healthy nation and the cost that leads into adult social care, whether that's about, and you know, in terms of children's, you know, the lack of it. Let's just look at what happened in terms of COVID and the impact that had on.
Hoskin, you've got 30 seconds.
I will finish off. The impact that had on children and families, and the lack of response from this government. Investing in children, investing in families will pay off both in the capacity and the ability of our families to aspire and to deliver for this town, but also will be help our financial situation. In this budget, we have ways of addressing some of these things, but Councillor Mitchell is absolutely right. We need national action, government action, in order to redress and rebalance the way we approach investment, and we're not going to get that from Conservatives, and hopefully a Labour government will take an entirely different approach and invest in our future.
Thank you, Councillor Hoskin. Councillor Hacker.
There we are, lovely. Can I just start by asking Councillor Mitchell to repeat what he just said about equality, diversity and inclusion?
Councillor Hacker, you can't have a dialogue.
Can I not?
No,
okay,
no,
well,
I'm
I'll have to
afraid
go
not.
with what I remembered. And what I remembered, and hence my gasp of disgust, is a member of the Conservative Party suggesting we could save money by reducing the amount of money we spend on equality, diversity and inclusion, considering the, quite frankly, Islamophobic words coming out of their very own MPs and government. We have not, it's just Islamophobia, we have racism, we have transphobia pouring out of government. I think the very last thing that we should cut back on, and maybe we should spend a little bit of extra money for maybe the Conservative councillors, is equality, diversity and inclusion training. These are the very building blocks of a decent society, and I am flabbergasted. I will have to spend just a couple of seconds pulling myself back together again, because this is not what I was originally going to talk about, but I think it's disgraceful, absolutely disgusting. Anyway, what I was going to say is that it's all very well for the Conservative opposition here, the opposition to everyone. It's an interesting position to be in. It's like being mansplained budgets. You're getting told a lot of facts, but nothing really actually is cohesive, assuming that the people over there don't know what they're doing and haven't studied the budgets and done everything they can to avoid reducing services to our residents. Nobody comes into, well, I certainly haven't, goes into being a councillor with a view to making people's lives more miserable. Nobody does that. These people over there, and I was with them for nearly 13 years, will have spent every hour they could ensuring that the budget they put together today is the best budget they can manage. And it's easy to criticise, it's very easy to criticise, but we're currently dealing with a sticking plaster government. And this government are the ones that tricked you up before they offered you the plaster. That's what's happened. So they say, oh no, isn't it terrible that all these bad things are happening? But what they could start by doing is valuing the residents in Reading and all the councils across the country. If you value those residents and you seriously and genuinely care about their well-being, all of them, the poor, the rich, the well, the infirm, every single one of them, you provide councils, which is a very organisation that supports and looks after those people with adequate funding to provide the services they need to live long, happy and healthy lives. And they simply do not care, from what I can see. It's as simple as that. They do not care. They're happy to throw multi-million-pound contracts towards their best buds who can go and then spend them on luxury yachts. But when it comes to the fundamentals of the people we see on the streets, the homeless, the ones who are posting in Facebook groups, wondering what the process is if we're being made homeless, those who can't get GP appointments, the people who are desperate for care for their parents, but they simply cannot afford it. It's really mealy-mouthed words. I'm very sorry to say it, but I'm really angry. And the EDI comment really just threw me off the edge, because EDI, equality, diversity and inclusion, affects every single one of us. None of us will never be impacted by this. I personally am finding myself impacted as a person who has developed disabilities over the year. Inclusion is my friends at Reading Pride, and I'm a proud trustee of Reading Pride. And equality sees that everybody is treated fairly, and equity being a better phrase. And so I will be supporting the Labour group today. I don't think that's any surprise to anyone. But even if I was wavering, which I'd not, after that little conversation over there, I'd be throwing as many votes as I can at them, all arms, all legs. I used to do ballet, I can do it. So that's all I have to say. You have my support. I'm sorry about these guys.
Thank you, Councillor Hacker. Is that a personal point of clarification, Councillor Mitchell? I will allow a brief.
Mr. Mayor, I'm grateful to you for that opportunity. I actually said, if you want the quote, I said that the often discredited staff EDI programs, I was not criticising the need for equality, diversity and inclusion in itself. But some organisations, not just councils, some organisations have taken the programs they employ to extremes. That was the point I was making. I was not criticising the concept of better equality, diversity, inclusion. Of course, we fully endorse that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Mitchell. I'm sure you can continue this discussion outside after the meeting. That brings us to Councillor Leng and then Councillor Emberson.
Here we are again. Context. Councillor Brock said, yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll give thanks to the Finance Officers, Director for Finance, the ADs and the leadership and the Chief Exec, Councillor Brock, Councillor Terry and all councillors from all parties that have played a part in setting this budget in testing circumstances. I'm still relatively new to this. Nowhere near Councillor Page's 51st budget, not the knowledge of revenue pressures on councils and local government in general. Indeed, residents have felt Tory austerity, the impacts of it, possibly from 2012 onwards, even though it started in 2010. What hits home for all of us, in particular as councillors, is the responsibility we feel, you feel, the responsibility to protect frontline services and those services important to our residents. Budget setting is a long and detailed process. Meetings, briefings, informal discussions, difficult decisions, financial realities, capital programme, treasury management and consultations. All the more difficult sometimes by the fact that we all live in the town. We're part of it. We are stakeholders. It's why local democracy works better than anything else offered on the menu. We have a personal connection to our town and its people. Little big town that I love so much. I never wanted it to be a city, still don't. Reading City Football Club just doesn't work for me. Now moving on to the substantive, there's been quite a lot mentioned. So I'll talk about the portfolio, start with assets, the Cinderella portfolio as I call it, as well as our community buildings, which Councillor Barnett Ward said. We have an investment portfolio, which I'm sure you all know about it. Kennet Wharf, Adelphi House, D-Luck Visa, Friar Street, and 410 Thames Valley Park, as well as Acre Business Park, which is also place-based, hashtag place-based that we always say, which has our social value policy in it, providing space for new startups. The portfolio is on a stable footing, contributing circa 3 million per annum. Not only is this council the best domestic landlord for our tenants in council homes, we're also an exemplary commercial landlord. We are investing, decarbonising our portfolio and improving the buildings at all time. This is evidenced by the willingness of our AAA commercial tenants committing to extending their leases. Unlike other councils, our investment assets provide a good financial return for the council, able to mitigate against commercial market pressure. Michael Gove's been mentioned a couple of times tonight. Michael Gove's recent announcement in changing the rules, which in effect would force councils to sell their buildings and capitalise their assets to offset against revenue pressure. This will not happen in this town. Year in, year out, prudent planning means Reading remains financially stable and is able to continue to invest in improved facilities for businesses and residents. I'll nick that quote. Confidence in this is showing by the increasing external investment in our town, commitment by government, Tory government, it trusts us to deliver projects through the LUF and of course businesses. The partnership development of the Minster Quarter highlights this confidence. The ongoing planning process will ensure the highest quality and design on a net zero project. A new state-of-the-art studio theatre at the Hexagon, which we keep going on about and we'll keep plugging, in addition to our new civic library. Our high streets are changing. Home working, online shopping and Amazon tax maybe in the future, who knows. So we have 40,000 square metres of new commercial space coming, new workspace, new retail, food and beverage, plus a 102-bedroom hotel to help drive our local economy forward. Residential, culture, retail now coming together to all benefit each other. It will open Dusseldorf Way and Queen's Walk onto the
Oxford, 30 seconds,
Oxford Road, providing excellent public realm and a bustling market. It will provide 180 affordable homes, including social rent and Reading affordable rent level, a mixed development, tenure blind, providing good quality family homes. Our strategic objective has always been to offer as much affordable housing through the national planning policy as possible. To this date, we recently we provided 313 affordable homes with a further 1,024 in the pipeline and 281 affordable homes currently under construction. So again, I thank the leadership, particularly of Councillor Brock and Councillor Terry, and I ask colleagues on all sides to support this budget. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ling. Councillor Emberson and then Councillor McEwen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Like colleagues, I'd like to pass my thanks to staff across the council for their hard work as ever in preparing this budget. This Labour Council has a long-standing commitment to social housing and our tenants, and we talk the talk and walk the walk. So I don't know why Councillor White is putting a funny face. I'll get to what the Greens do on social housing. The budget tonight shows, the budget tonight shows our continued commitment to significant financial investment in housing. We're leading the way for our own programme of delivering 400 additional council homes by 2025. And as well as the local authority new build programme, the service continues to support those across the town who are struggling. We've seen unprecedented numbers of residents present at the Civic in terms of being at risk of homelessness in the past year, and we continue to offer a wide range of services and commission specialists to accommodate and support rough sleepers in our town. We have 249 bed spaces available to support people away from rough sleeping, and the budget also allows us to ensure decent standard of homes across our own stock. This budget assumes just shy of 14 million investment in zero carbon retrofit works for our existing tenants, and we've seen that work take place across the town. This budget also includes additional staffing in our housing and energy support team to continue the important proactive work to tackle damp and mould issues. We also continue to invest in technology to ensure that as a landlord, we are accessible to tenants and able to efficiently deal with repairs. Mr. Mayor, the Greens opposite talk the talk of affordable housing. In their leaflets, they say everyone deserves a home they can afford, and Greens will keep working on this. However, we know that the Greens do not walk the walk on affordable housing, having voted against 46 new council homes with passive house principles in Coley. On this side, we instead propose a budget that allows the housing service to continue to support those most in need. We're proposing, as we do every single year, a housing revenue account business plan which is sustainable, allowing us to continue to upgrade council homes, deliver truly affordable council homes and support tenants and those struggling with housing across our town. I'd like to again note my thanks to the Housing Service and colleagues in Finance for preparing this budget. I support the motion as moved for continued investment by this Labour Council in housing in Reading.
Thank you, Councillor Emberson, Councillor Rowland and then Councillor Ennis. Oh, sorry, my apologies. Councillor McEwen and then Councillor Rowland.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to start, as colleagues have, by thanking all the officers in the portfolio and across the council for their dedication throughout the past year, their hard work and dedication of the past year. As the public health and education portfolio is quite large, I'm going to start talking about the public health area of the portfolio. Colleagues will be aware the Public Health Service is to aims to prevent health inequalities within the town. Over the past year, just some of the work includes children's public health programmes, public mental health service, weight management programme, sexual health contract, alcohol pathways, and the smoking cessation programme, all of which are of vital importance for the public health team. Colleagues will be aware of the Community Health Champion Scheme. Officers established a network of community vaccine health volunteers during the pandemic, and they're still working to promote good health and support people and communities across the town. The delivery of the Compass Recovery College team offer, an organisation which supports many across the borough. I could go on talking about the public health work, but there is so much, including over 3,000 health checks were delivered in 2023 in partnership with the NHS. And all of this supports the health of our residents. The public health grant, which was recently announced for next year, is 10.8 million. It's not a huge uplift, but I think the team work incredibly hard. But wouldn't it be wonderful to have an increase in that budget, so increase the work we could do? Moving on to education. There is, of course, some really good news that the River Academy is due to open later this year, which I'm sure where people agree that's something to celebrate, with wonderful school for our children. The admissions team is working hard to ensure all of Reading's children have a school place in September, and will continue to work with partners to support our children and keep up with future demand for secondary places in the town. Colleagues will be aware that the High Needs block of the Dedicated Skills Grant provides funding to support pupils with special educational needs and disability, SEND, children who require additional support to participate in education and learning. We are committed to providing SEND places to increase in SEND places for children within the borough. Colleagues will also be aware of the financial pressures relating to the SEND and the High Needs block, and also school transport is highlighted in the reports this evening. I'm just going to move on now to talk about adult education, the New Directions College, which I feel really is a jewel in the crown within our town. The college was awarded the Excellent in Apprenticeships Award by the Institute of Leadership and Management. Last year saw the launch of an exhibition within Reading Museum to celebrate 65 years of anniversary of the lifelong learning within Reading. I was also invited to the annual award ceremony for New Directions College and met students, and it was really incredibly positive to hear about the experiences while studying at the college. I think, New Directions really is a crucial service. As a council, we are delivering on our strategy to reduce inequality through an innovative place-based approach with a focus on skills, education and training. We're delivering a service that aligns and connects to local projects and programmes, and of work that links to improved economic and social outcomes and skills for adults within the town, delivering projects such as Multiply. Also building and delivering on foundation level opportunities into jobs within existing and emerging sectors. So I'd really like to end by again thanking officers for the continued work, enriching lives and health of all of our residents, and I commend this budget.
Thank you very much, Councillor McEwen. Councillor Rowland, then Councillor Ennis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm appreciative that opposition councillors were unanimous in understanding the constraints on environmental services and community safety portfolio that they're working under to deliver successes for Reading. I'd like to thank those officers for their hard work to deliver those achievements, and I'd like to highlight but a few from this past year. There is no doubt that this town continues to suffer from the Tories' lack of ability to provide neighborhood policing the way our communities need it. Continuing to prepare this town for a new local police area structure that will see Reading share policing across Newbury and Wokingham later this year, the number of PCSOs continue to reduce in the face of funding constraints, leaving communities bereft of visible bobbies on the beat. Saying that, we all owe a vote of thanks to the substantial works to Superintendent Rathfield and his Reading-based police force continue to provide with those beleaguered resources. They are always seeking to work sharper with what resources they have and improve comms with our communities, and around actions taken have been positively received. The collaboration that this council enjoys with the local Thames Valley Police through our Community Safety Partnership has strengthened our ability to ensure that deep-rooted issues around crime and disorder are addressed, and that when residents tell us about things, we're deploying the right resources to sort solutions. Community Safety Partnership is providing solutions to complex issues by listening and engaging more closely, such as the work this year with young people through the Young Voices group, who are already teaching us a thing or two about what their concerns are, and we are inviting those young persons to the table to be part of that solution. Our council's Safer Public Realm team is taking shape to ensure that officers are focused on investing time in our communities, out speaking with residents to find solutions to ASB and disorder. We're listening and working collaboratively towards solutions around prostitution, street begging, car meets, and the uptick in shoplifting. That team is beginning to sort effective engagement with communities in South Reading to find solutions to entrenched challenges. And we've established a water safety partnership, recognizing that well-equipped waterways and water safety education can prevent casualties. I'm proud of the fact that this Labour Council has made effective use of the PCC's Safer Streets funding to improve safety for women and girls by providing better CCTV coverage and lighting in the town center and establishing Reading's new Safe Hub, working with partners in the town to support vulnerable individuals. Our environmental services team has seen challenges over the past year with spiraling costs in services and rising costs with recycling at RE3. The budget presented tonight reflects those concerns. However, we refuse to cave in and have ensured that from the end of March, Reading will have one of the first all-electric collection vehicle fleets in this country. Achieving environmental goals may come at some initial expense, but the environment is something that this Labour Council will always seek to prioritize. Reading is proudly one of 9 funded trials with the National Flex Collect project, wherein a pilot group of households are helping us learn how best to collect soft plastics curbside in preparation for the government's Simpler Recycling scheme. Simpler recycling, as dictated by this government, is not so simple. And I'm grateful that our RE3 partnership is working proactively to determine the best ways to meet the new requirements. Through that partnership, for example, it is likely that economies of scale will pay off well when implementing curbside glass recycling and achieving an improved recycling rate. Fly tipping continues to be a never-ending frustration for the vast majority that manage to properly dispose of their waste. And I'm proud to say that our small but mighty enforcement team is ranked 16th in this country for issuing fixed penalty notices to those that insist on ruining the environment for everyone else. There is no excuse for fly tipping, as booking a trip to the tip is available in over 120 languages, and with a 92% user satisfaction rate, RE3 makes it really easy to do the right thing. Admittedly, we were challenged this year, along with neighboring councils, with the excess green waste during the past year's growing season, which overwhelmed our resources and reduced our ability to collect on time for a good part of the year. However, we rose to that challenge, sincerely apologized to our customers, and set out a plan that has seen green bin collections, sans a few hiccups, return to on-time collections when promised.
You've got 30 seconds, Councillor.
Thank you. Our highways team walked away with the Best Service Team Award this year, a testament to this Labour Council's substantial investment in our roads and officers that made an effective and innovative work of improving our roads, pavements, and structures. 80% of our roads are now ranked as good and not requiring more immediate attention as a result. Ingenuity, stick-to-itiveness, and aspirations for a better tomorrow have ensured that officers have still delivered despite the crushing budget that this government has handed this local government. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Rowland. Councillor Ennis, and then I've got Councillor Singh. Councillor Ennis.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Mayor? Still awake?
I think we might just skip on now.
It might be next year. That's a good start, isn't it? I'd like to start by thanking all outstanding officers. I think they've been brilliant in, as we've all said across across parties, that they've been true public servants in supporting Reading and getting us to a position which is absolutely factually not great, but certainly better than others. And that's not boasting or gloating. It's been a difficult period and it will continue to be so. It's 5 years since we declared a climate emergency. And in those 5 years, you know, the challenge for our budget is one thing, but the challenge for the climate is something else. 2023 was the warmest year on record. Source Copernicus, whatever that is, that's a good organisation, but it's a fact that it was the warmest year last year on record. February 24 is likely to be one of the wettest on record, and we've had flooding in Reading, and that's the Met Office. 2022, we saw a heat wave where UK temperatures exceeded 40 degrees for the first time at the Met Office, and then Reading's all-time temperature record was also broken. And if I'm right in saying, it was one of the warmest autumns that we've had. So that's the challenge we've got of the climate. And what have we done? What are we trying to do? I think we can say with pride that there's been good progress, but there is just still much more to be done. No complacency, no sitting there thinking it's done. It's not. It's only just started. And that's why we need to call for all residents, communities, organisations, business and political parties to pull together to achieve net zero in Reading by 2030. These are our achievements. We work with Reading Climate Partnership. We don't do it alone. We can't do it alone. It's not the administration or Labour councillors or officers. It is a partnership and other local organisations to achieve it. And we're committed to reducing the council its own carbon footprint. The achievements so far, 51% reduction in the borough's carbon emissions since 2005, the 8th largest reduction across 374 local authorities. Reading leads all other Berkshire local authority areas for emission reductions and is ahead of the UK average by 12 percentage points. 74% reduction in the council's own carbon emissions in 14 years. Target to reduce the council's use of fossil fuels by 50%, met 2 years ahead of schedule. 68% reduction in emissions from waste since 2016, largely due to reduction of rubbish going to landfill. And Reading has featured on the Carbon Disclosure Project, CDP, Global Environmental A-list for 3 successive years, with only 25 other UK councils. We're working with the Berkshire Hospital, with Reading FC, they're getting something right, the University of Reading and other organisations, and there's more events. We were one of the first councils to produce a detailed climate action plan, and we will be reviewing that strategy this year. We call on other parties to support us. I'd like to thank Councillor Hacker. I mean, to me, you'll always be a colleague. Congratulate and thank the Lib Dems. You'll wait. Give me a minute. The Lib Dems for their adult discussions and thoughtful contributions during traffic management and others. We'd like to thank the Conservative government for that £26 million that we received from Boris Johnson, who will be known as the last Green Tory leader. Ridiculous, isn't it? Who gave us £26 million to make improvements on the buses. Don't just chuck it around willy-nilly, make permanent change. Change, do routes, do lanes, do everything. That was government money. I'd be there screaming about it. What did you do? You voted against it. You locked up your only Green Tory member at the back who couldn't make the meeting for some reason. What a shame. And you came out with the car is...
Councillor Ennis, you've got 30 seconds. I know you're on a roll, yeah.
The Greens, where can I go? You voted against the bus service improvement plan. The bus service improvement, cheaper fares, more transport, more buses. And the reason you gave, I can write it down, is because residents on London Road can't get out of their drives. That's the reason you gave. That's the reason you gave. Well, it is rubbish, and I totally agree. Where are you? Where are you on the fight for climate change? Where are you? You're not with us. It's time to be with us. It's time to unite. It's time to save the climate, not chase votes at short term. Whoever turns up at your door, you get your vote, you'll be with them. NIMBYs.
John, you're talking rubbish there.
Thank you, Councillor Ennis. Now for some cabaret. Councillor Singh and then Councillor McElroy.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to thank officers for the report. In the report, there's a proposal to further increase the 7.4 million to contract sum for the brighter future for children. And I agree with that proposal. I would also like to bring everyone's attention that there are a number of children in any authority who are costing between 250,000 to 750,000 per annum. This is unsustainable and utterly inexcusable. And we need to investigate if this is the case in Reading as well and find ways to remediate. And you have mentioned some programs and find solutions to bring children back to their parents and on the family network, rather than putting them in a high cost residential placement, which on average cost 300,000 to 500,000 per year. So we really need to look at these issues. Also, the government must urgently reform the core funding mechanisms. I agree with that. And the demand and the cost pressures faced by local authorities, which is adequately considered in determining the funding levels, and review the delivery of social services. So I agree with that as well. Having said that, I've heard everyone speak. I disagree with Reading Labour's proposal to raise the council tax by the maximum. The Reading Labour administration is completely out of touch with local residents who, now more than ever, are making difficult decisions about what to spend their income and savings on. Reading Labour is not a new administration. They have been in charge of the council over decades and increased the council tax each year. It's worth noting the biggest council tax increases made by this administration was when they had Labour government in power, whopping 10.1% in the year 2002 and 2003. Reading Labour always never let you know the extra tax they are taking every year from all the new flats being built in the town. Reading Labour, we've heard about green initiatives. We have also heard about talk the talk, walk the walk, but their own manifesto here pledges 35 million, including installing vehicle electric charging points. How many of those have been installed? 15, just 15 in last 2 years. This also talks about introducing doorstep glass recycling. I don't have it. Maybe the mayor has it. I don't know if somebody else has it. I need to know that. But yeah, it's just talk, no walk. Instead, over the years, we have seen the parking charges up, fly tipping up, pollution up, traffic jams up, bin sizes reduced, swimming pool closed, residents' worries ignored. In return of back-breaking council tax increases year on year, Reading are getting dead rats on our high streets. And I'm not speaking metaphorically. The inconvenient truth is the rising taxes should not be dictate council's priorities. And you cannot secure economic success of Reading by saddling its residents with high taxes, premium fees, or parceling out the blame to the government. I can't, I won't, I will not support this proposal. Before I end my speech, I would also like to pay tribute to Mr. Mayor. I believe this is your last budget meeting in the chambers. I will miss you next year. I'm not sure if many of your colleagues say the same thing, but I definitely miss you next year. And yeah, I'd like to end my speech there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Singh. I won't rise to that. But as ever, thank you for your contribution. Councillor McElroy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, thank you to council officers for the miracles that they managed to work despite the context being the word of the evening that they've been offered. To speak a bit more about context, I'm sad that again we'll just have to add the suggestions made by Councillor White to the growing list of nice things that we can't afford, which due to context, due to the financial incompetence of successive Labour and Tory governments, and to our Labour local council, who apparently prefer giving out hand over fist to auditors rather than get their accounts in on time, prefer wasting $1 million plus on roads no one wants, and the saddest of all, giving back money to central government for grants that they haven't bothered to spend. I can't provide context to all of the misleading and frankly cherry-picked facts that we've heard tonight, but I can say this. We were a wealthy country, but we're also a country of haves and have-nots, and inequality is getting worse. I urge those that are suffering to not let those in power gaslight us into forgetting that it was them, those in power, them that killed the goose in search of the golden eggs.
Thank you, Councillor McElroy. Councillor Terry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to start, as other colleagues have done, and put on record my thanks to those members of staff who have been involved in putting the council's budget together, but particularly Darren Carter, our Director of Finance, and I think, and Stuart Donnelly, who you may not all have met, who's our Deputy Section 151 officer, who obviously I know goes around doing a lot of the work for Mr. Carter, and so I don't want to miss him out. giveth and we taketh away. The council's leadership team, led by the chief executive, play a crucial role in supporting the administration in ensuring that the council not only stays financially viable, but in ensuring that the wide range of vital services are available and delivered to Reading residents. And so my thanks go to them as well. I'm sure that you've all noted in the resident survey that it unsurprisingly found that when asked, residents said that as their top answer, that they would reduce spending on corporate services rather than increase council tax. I understand that, I have sympathy with it, but I also know that when these core functions are cut back too far, a large and complex organisation such as the council cannot function effectively. We must therefore continue the work to enable the whole council to be as efficient as possible whilst ensuring sound governance, which is what we do, by the way, over here on this side. To that end, we've been committing resources to improving our digital offer and making use of machine learning. I'm not going to use AI yet, to automate processes to free up our key resource, our people, to deal with those matters that need human contact, problem solving, and a good dose of common sense. So we heard earlier examples of this in terms of adult social care. It was the IT and digital team that worked with adult social care to secure that £1.1 million of cutting edge technology to assist people to live independently and safely in their homes. And there will be other examples of this as we see this investment come to fruition over this year. I do want to mention some of the other corporate services who don't get a look in often. You know, the council tax and benefits team, the contracts that get procured by the procurement team, working with our fantastic voluntary and community organisations that contribute so much to the well-being of individuals and organisations and communities in this town. Those things don't happen on their own. They need people, they need staff, and they happen. I wanted to say some more about that, but I then got distracted by listening to the other side, and so I want to use some of my time to just address some of the things that were said. And Councillor White, I mean, you made something about a lack of meaningful consultation on the budget. I mean, I would point to the fact that we have the largest responses on the budget consultation than we've ever had. We had something like 378 responses last time, and we've had 661 responses this time. I mean, I'm not sure what it was he meant that we didn't do, but no. But we have consulted the public.
Mr. Mayor, personal explanation.
Come on, Councillor White. Carry on, Councillor.
I'll have a couple more minutes, really. I listened very carefully to the rest of it to try and, you know, find some common ground, because our residents don't want to see us fighting across the chamber, but we do have to sometimes point out the differences and make clear what they are. So I'm really pleased that we all agree that there should be a general election, apart from perhaps the party in the middle. And I'm very pleased to say that. But the rest of the things that Councillor White had to say, I kind of puzzled over it, really, because he talked about the things like vehicles emissions and delayed bins and investing in homelessness and all those sorts of things. I don't remember once, colleagues, talking to any of you about, I heard the Greens say that this is what we should do and therefore we made sure it was in the budget. Well, what I see is that over on this side, we listen and we hear our residents ourselves and we make sure things are in the budget. And I've been around Reading all my life, and I've been around the council quite a long time, longer than I've been a councillor. And this council has always made sure that it's paid its staff well. It's always been above what became known the minimum wage or the living wage.
30 seconds.
So, oh, right, OK. To go so quickly, I do want to turn my attention to Councillor Mitchell. I don't really know where to start, that after 14 years of this government, that you talk about it's not about inflation, that it's not about costs going up. It's not about austerity, when all of those things happened on your watch. That's what's happened to local government, you know, and your government's thinking about tax cuts, criticising us about having to put council tax up when, you know, Michael Gove himself said that we had to. Andrew Goodwin, a commandeer, said about the tax cuts. The problem is that this comes on the back of large real-term cuts to those departments. 2010 and 2015, quite restrained spending since then. The truth is that the efficiency savings are long exhausted. So when you talk about how are we going to find the money next year,
No,
well, we're
come on,
not going to
behave
find it
yourself,
from your
Councillor White.
government.
Thank you,
Sorry,
Councillor
Councillor.
Terry. I've had no further indications of speakers, so can I ask Councillor Brock to sum up, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the most popular budget I've ever moved, which is quite a delight, and a lot of love for officers this evening. Certainly the fifth party in the council, and a lot of affection for the Director of Finance and everybody who's worked on the budget. And I echo that, and we're tremendously grateful for it. It occurs to me that the officer party appear to be responsible for everything that's good, and Labour are responsible for everything that is bad. But an interesting move from the Greens. You know, nice to have support for the budget. I mean, it just goes to show you, vote for a Green councillor and you'll get Labour policies anyway, but they'll have no input into the development of them. And it seems to me that you'd probably be better off going and voting for a Labour councillor, but there you are. Very pleased with, as ever, the constructive approach that the Lib Dems have taken, and I have nothing mean to say. And the Conservatives, I think, just living in a complete sort of fantastical world that mostly consists of quoting CCHQ's press releases. Although, at least Councillor Mitchell is a man after my own heart in terms of the length of his contribution this evening. But the reality is that our budget today, this council, is smaller in real terms than it was in 2010. But we are asked to do more. Consistently and constantly, we are asked to do more, not just by circumstance, not just by the nature of the economy, not just by the struggles that our residents go through, but we are asked to do more explicitly by the government. It is a consistent trend to ask local government to do more and more and more, but the budget, the funding, the sustainable method of financing local councils up and down the country is never forthcoming. And it is wonderful, really, truly, to know that suddenly this evening, the Conservative group appear to have discovered children's services and the challenges around them, and that the care market is a broken one. Well, tell your man Dishy Rishi to do something about it. We've been promised year after year that they will be forthcoming with a plan to resolve the problems in social care in this country, but we have had nothing but sticking plasters, and there are not even very many sticking plasters anymore. So I am pleased to have such widespread support for the budget. I am probably pleased, really, that the Conservatives aren't supporting it, because given what their government has been up to in recent months and years, I'd be a bit disappointed if they turned around and said that we were doing the right thing. It would make me worry. So I suggest that we proceed to the vote, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brock. I will now put the motion to a recorded vote. And councillors, when I call your name, please state clearly whether you are for or against the motion, or whether you are abstaining. So, starting with Councillor Azari.
I am for.
Councillor Ayub. Councillor Baldeston.
Against.
Councillor Barnett Ward.
For.
Councillor Brock.
For.
Councillor Challenger.
For.
Councillor Cresswell.
For.
Councillor Cross.
For.
Councillor Davis.
For.
Councillor Dennis.
For.
Councillor Eden.
For.
Councillor Edwards. Councillor Emberson.
For.
Councillor Ennis.
For.
Councillor Gavin.
For.
Councillor Gittings.
For.
Councillor Goss.
Against.
Councillor Griffith.
For.
Councillor Hacker.
For.
Councillor Hornsby Smith.
For.
Councillor Hoskin.
For.
Councillor Gittani.
For.
Councillor Keane.
For.
Councillor Keeping.
For.
Councillor Kitchingham.
For.
Councillor Lanzoni.
For.
Councillor Leng.
For.
Councillor Lovelock.
For.
Councillor Magon. Councillor McCann.
For.
Councillor McElroy.
For.
Councillor McEwen.
For.
Councillor McGoldrick.
For.
Councillor Mitchell.
Against?
Councillor Moore,
For.
Councillor Maprufa-Coles,
For.
Councillor O'Connell,
For.
me, for, Councillor Robinson,
Against.
Councillor Rowland,
For.
Councillor Singh, Councillor Terry,
For.
Councillor Thompson,
For.
Councillor White,
For.
Councillor Williams, Councillor Woodward, Councillor Yeo.
For.
Well, that's clearly carried. Do you want to give me the figures or not? 44 and 5 against with 1 absentee. Thank you. That takes us on then to the corporate plan. Councillor Brock to move.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I shan't detain us for 11 minutes because you wouldn't let me.
No.
The corporate plan is very much the sort of operational counterpart to the budget, transforming those principles that we've established financially into programmes of work to run as a golden thread throughout the organisation. It has a dull name, I accept, and I think one of the things that might be quite good to do with this in the future is to give it a more exciting name, because we are now in the sort of final year of its cycle. So this is very much an update to our corporate plan, but next year and beyond, there will be a refreshed and revamped version. Now, as colleagues will note, there are some changes to the KPIs. I am quite sure, as I always say every year, that there will be targets in here that we do not meet. And it is quite right that we should set targets that are sufficiently aspirational that actually we will not meet them all. It would be the easiest thing in the world for us to simply set a series of very simple, straightforward, achievable targets, but that is not what we want the council to do. We want it to be aspirational. We want our officers up and down the organisation to work as hard as they can towards the benefit of residents. And I have nothing more to say, so I move as printed.
Councillor Terry.
Second and reserve my right, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Josh Williams.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, just briefly from me, we've done the big agenda item, haven't we? As Councillor Brock says, we've all seen this and been a bit disappointed by it before. We aren't voting on the corporate plan as such, just a refresh of the existing plan. So I guess that means what we have to say is pretty similar to last year, but it's good to recycle. As Councillor Brock says, we wouldn't have a corporate plan on this side. We'd have a positive vision for Reading that puts people and the planet first. The welcome section says that it's hugely ambitious. I'm not sure if it is. We see the same as last year. 5 neighbourhoods are now within the 10% most deprived in the country. This has got worse under a Labour council. It's not got better. What is this plan doing that others have failed to do to address this? Not enough. More of the same is simply going to get us more of the same. So we have high hopes for the completely new plan next time around. This plan claims under getting the best value, we strive for value for money in everything we do. But the survey of residents shows that only 42% agreed that Reading Borough Council provides value for money. Putting aside whether people agree with Labour's policies or its principles, when asked if they're just doing the basics right, delivering services, 6 out of 10 people think Labour can't deliver value for money. Worse than that, Mr. Mayor, the percentage that agree that the council's delivering value for money is falling every year. Worse even than that, the hugely ambitious target that Labour has set itself is to have 50% of people agree the council delivers value for money. They are happy in the Labour group. They're delighted. They've met their very ambitious target. If half the town thinks they don't deliver value for money, half. Under traffic congestion, which page 10 already, something our town is plagued with, and with the lead councillor for transport saying that there were no plans for a ULEZ in Reading, we discovered when we read the budget papers which have just been passed and agreed that officers are drawing up plans for a ULEZ in Reading. Quote, officers are investigating the legal basis under which this could be achieved, which is a bit sneaky. As always, There are some things in here we would wholeheartedly support: our parks, open spaces, bin collections, rewilding, libraries, affordable housing and more. But is the plan ambitious? As Councillor Brock claims, let's pick out 2 ambitious targets. The percentage of household waste recycled is down, so Labour have revised the target down to 51%. The percentage of food waste recycled is down, so the target is revised down to 14%. That doesn't sound ambitious, and you could pick any number of targets that don't sound ambitious at all. So the Green Group will vote against this because Reading deserves better. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Terry, do you want to sort it out?
It's the same as last time.
No.
It is worth it. Don't provoke me. I think I'll let the leader continue. Thank you.
Right. Councillor Brock to sum up.
Yeah, I mean, it's always a great pleasure. I mean, look, you know, the metrics that have been pointed out in terms of resident survey are ones that are pretty much bang on the national average. I think it tells us rather more about the sort of depressing state of people running down local government all the time, which is pretty much the Greens' MO, isn't it? So no surprises there. But I am pleased that we have the plan in the shape that it is. I'm pleased that we continue to have consistency and stability in incredibly difficult times, and I suggest we proceed to the vote.
Thank you, Councillor Brock. Can I see all those in favour of the corporate plan? And all those against? That's clearly carried. And that concludes the business for this evening. And can I thank you for your attendance and have a safe journey home? Thank you.